Hello, everybody. Welcome to our fireside chat today with Oliver Pugh. You may notice, as Oliver was just mentioning, we had a bit of a technical difficulty and had to give him one of our coworkers login details. So no, his name is not Josh. It's Oliver. So we only have 30 minutes, so we're going to dive right into it. Oliver, I'm going to let him introduce himself, but just a heads up. 3 times founder, ton of experience, I think particularly relevant for our audience who are either thinking about getting into entrepreneurship, in the early days of it, trying to figure out how to get traction, how to get their first funding rounds. And considering Oliver's done this now 3 times, I think he can probably speak in depth to all the grit that you need to have and all the challenges and how to overcome them. So Oliver, thank you for coming. I also want to say happy belated birthday. I think I got a
Thanks, man.
The other day that it was your birthday. So thanks for sharing, I guess, your post birthday.
I've just about recovered, Eric. Just about.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. So yeah, let's start off and just maybe tell us just like briefly, your about the companies that you've started.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, bud. Really appreciate the intro. Hi, everybody. So crazy to see so many people attend. I guess entrepreneurship is a sexy thing nowadays, and I mean, I wouldn't change what I do for the world, but it definitely is a hard slog. I've been an entrepreneur since really forever. To be honest, I'm 36 as of Sunday. I was the kid selling like copied DVDs in the playground at school, right? Like that was me, or like sweets to kids when I was younger. And so, yeah, it's all I know. I had like an event sting in my early 20s, and that did okay. And we didn't raise any money for that. That was purely bootstrapped. Then I did a brand called EarlyBird, which we did raise money for, and that actually sadly failed. And that was a whole number of lessons learned, and I can talk more about the lessons learned there in failure than I could talk about lessons learned in any success that I've had. And then I founded TableYeti 5 years ago, nearly. No, actually, kind of like we started writing code 5 years ago. And TableYeti is a payments platform for hospitality businesses that help help exceptional operators generate more revenue, generate more profits, and something that kind of sits really close to our hearts is generate more tips for all the hardworking staff members. And so like quite a real range of different types of businesses I ran and started, and and the way that I've approached them over the years has been, from a financing perspective, is actually always been a little different. So I can take you through those. But yeah, that's me. 36-year-old entrepreneur from London.
Fantastic breadth of experience here. So to get right into probably the most pressing question, and again, to give you context, first time entrepreneurs are always like, how do I get investment, right? It's like maybe you have little traction, no traction, a pitch deck, they don't know anybody. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey with any of your startups or all of your startups, about how you got that initial seed capital to get the ball rolling? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah, for sure. So there's definitely 3 companies. I've raised money for 2 of them. One was completely bootstrapped, no outside money. The 2 that I raised money for, EarlyBird and TableYeti, there is definitely a similarity between the way they were started, and I think it's really important to understand this. And that is that I didn't raise any money for either of them until we'd made a first version of the product. So actually, I think a huge litmus test on this, if I was an angel investor, of which I'm not yet, maybe one day, the thing that the litmus test for me would be, can this person figure out how to get like a prototype of the product and company, so brand and essence, like, and vision, can they get that prototype to the point where they can pitch it to customers without needing external capital? Because that's like the initial hustle, that if you haven't got that initial hustle, like, you are never going to actually be able to then hustle the next stages, right? It's so hard to build and grow a company that yeah, if you can't figure out how to kind of, convince a few people to help you out when you're a poor founder, to get your MVP made, then you've not got much hope being able to do the rest. And so I've approached that in different ways. So with TableYeti, I was where I met Eric. Actually, I was in the Balkans, mentoring startups for this Swiss entrepreneurship program thing, and I'd had around the same time I had the idea for kind of adding value on top of payments and hospitality, and I had no money really. Like, I was like relatively EarlyBird had failed, and I wasn't particularly liquid, and I managed to convince some software engineers to like build an MVP of the product for like £5,000 and 5% of the company, right? And so that got me, and I was pretty broke, right? Like, you can ask the missus. that got me from like not being in the game after a failure, right? Like, as well. So I was not in the game after a failure to being back in the game. And that, that approach really works. And we launched the product in March 2019. And then, a few friends saw it and were like, oh, this is actually quite cool what you've made. I see the problem that you're solving. And they were like, can I give you like $5,000 as well? And then like a friend of a friend introduced us to his dad, who's like used to run like pubs. I think he was like a managed pub owner, John Sugden, his name is. And he was like, I'll give you 12,500. And so like we had like 25,000, right? Like that was our like friends and family round. But that came from people seeing the product, and our MRR, right? This was crazy. Was like £72. Right? It was one restaurant paying for 2 devices, and that was how that was approached. And then we used that money. I didn't take any salary, neither did Tom, who was working with me on it at the time. For the rest of that year, we spent all of that 27. It was actually 27,500. I remember. We spent all of that on making the product better. Right. And then at the end of 2019, we then raised the proper pre-seed round. And so that's like, that's the hustle.
And so are you a software developer, or did you have to rely on others to build out the product at the beginning?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not a software engineer.
Wow.
I'm a product guy.
Yeah.
Like, to kind of give you some more context on this, like humans are such great sponges for learning. Like, I don't know how many people on this are software engineers, but like, I didn't even use like Postman. Like, I didn't even know what that was, right? Like, how to like make an API call from a bit of software to your servers. Like, I literally had no idea. I just was like, I understand product. I know what great products look like. I like taught myself how to I understand how software functioned, but without ever being an engineer, and then put my trust in some people that I'd built a relationship with, right? Like, I'd actually built a relationship with these guys out in Macedonia, and no, I mean, I can definitely code a bit now, but
so
then,
you literally,
I really couldn't.
You said to them, hey, build out this thing. I can't pay you right now, but I'll give you equity. and
Yeah.
then you took that MVP and you started showing it to investors.
Yeah.
What?
But we actually got a customer. So
Oh,
they
right.
got to the MVP and found a customer that said that they wanted it. And then, because that customer was a restaurant, then we'd actually take investors to that restaurant, which worked quite well. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that when they actually got to interact with the product at the restaurant.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What do you think is, I don't know if there's an answer to this, but like building something or getting customers, I mean, those things are, it's two sides of the same coin. Is there, from the getting investment perspective, is there one, do you think, that has more weight than the other? Like the ability to build, to get customers?
I mean, I think, I think that you can definitely, if you can tell a story that, like, you've made like a landing page and you've got this narrative and you've pushed people to this landing page and they've signed up to to have this problem solved that you talk about on the landing page, and then you've called them up and been like, hey, like, I saw you signed up to my product, like, can I do a survey with you, blah blah, go through the mom test with them, and then take that story and package it up and go out to market. I think that would work. I think that customers, or like a wait list, can add as much value as product. I just think that I just like making product, and so I was just like, well, actually, I just want to make this thing, which is this, just the way that I am. I don't, I advise a fair few different companies, and I always, in my advice, try to be so logical and reasonable. And then I look at things that I've done in the past and I'm like, that was really not logical or reasonable. But, like, it is what it is. And I, do what, if it excites you to get out of bed and work and iterate on a product, and you can do that cheaply and get to an MVP point, do that, right? But if you can't, if that doesn't excite you, but marketing does, and making web pages does, and telling a story does, do that, right? Like, do what you love, because it's bloody hard. Yeah.
When you're getting with both your startups, when you're getting, so we have a lot of companies that, they're taking this advice to heart, right? And we kind of give them similar advice where it's like, hey, you need to go out and get sort of, like you said, either letters of intent from potential partners or, signups or whatever it is. Was it fairly easy to get people to sign up for your products? Or did you encounter friction at all?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I mean, it's still hard now. And we're doing like 135 million a year in payments, and it's still a slog. Back then, what was it hard? What did I do? Actually, I can tell you exactly how we got connected to the first customer.
Sure.
I reached out I was on LinkedIn. We had Instagram. We had an Instagram page for TableYeti. And I reached out to this guy that was like connected to this restaurant. And his name was Jonathan Drain. His name is really, really lovely guy. And I actually met him, and because he was just such a nice dude, I met him and showed him the prototype. And then he was like, oh, you should speak to my friend Fernando, who's running this restaurant. And so, like, that's how that connection worked. And it was a bit, it took us 3 months, I think. Yeah, that was about it. So we had a prototype early Jan 19 that worked just about. And then we found our first customer. We got our first customer live 6th of March 2019. And just to kind of like give people like just a bit of color on how hard it is when you've got that first customer using your product. I literally lived in the basement of that restaurant for like 6 weeks. Literally every day.
Yeah.
Literally. Yeah. Every day. Because like stuff would break, and like it was an MVP, right? Like it kind of didn't always work properly. So that it was I remember it being difficult just because I'd actually never done B2B sales before, like outreach. So that was new. But yeah, actually people were like super friendly and wanted to help, like, because we were so early.
So, because different markets have different sort of let's say obstacles, and I'm curious, like restaurant owners. So you got that first customer, and then you had to obviously, like, how many restaurants do you have now?
Oh God, like a lot. I think if you take into account like Tap to Tip, which has got like 450 odd, and then Yeti, which is like 200 odd. So it's like nearly 700, I think, give or take.
700.
Yeah.
Do you find the restaurant industry, like, are they easy to approach and easy to, because I would imagine like somebody who's running a restaurant, it's like, oh my God, I'm so busy, I have so much I need to get done, and then they must have people approaching them all the time with like, oh, you should use this, you should use this service, this SaaS product, whatever. Or is it not like that? Like, was it fairly easy to kind
Oh
of?
my God. No, it's like it was. I mean, it was easier back then. Now it's a complete nightmare. Like you
Mm.
just can't. Yeah, sell it. I wouldn't do another trying to sell to hospitality startup again, even though this one is like moderately successful now. It's that hard and that traumatizing. Like, yeah,
I love it.
it's really tough, and it's really tough on the guys, the sales team, and it's taken us like building out quite a bit of a convoluted process to like get this figured out. Like we have like this is kind of what it takes though, right? This is the stuff this is the difference between like the company making it or not. Is like this year I spent 2 weeks in South Africa, and I'm the founder, right? Like I'm still like 4-5 years in, I'm still like hustling, and I went to South Africa for 2 weeks, set up a little call center there that's just like now calling like restaurants and bars and cafes all day, and then that like gets fed into our like internal like sales engine here, and depending on like what part of the like ideal customer profile spectrum they sit in, they get like sent different things or invited to an event, etc. And then hopefully over a period of time you can build a relationship with them and then finally have permission to sell. And yeah, it's because I think that hospitality businesses are like hectic, and people are always, and like you're not going to be number one priority at that point in time, because number one priority is probably going to be that like they don't have a pot wash for their site in like Cheltenham, and then they're because it's a sexy industry, they're getting sold to a lot. So
Right.
do you want to buy these oranges through to like, do you want new payments? Yeah, so it's not easy, but I think this is again like something that's so important is like I love hospitality. Like I was born and raised in pubs and restaurants. Like my grandparents ran pubs and restaurants. So like I'm just gonna keep on going.
Right.
I'm not stopping. Like there's no way I stop. So yeah, but that's because I care. So there's an argument to say that you don't necessarily have to have like endless passion for the industry you're selling to or the problems you're solving. I see both sides of this argument, but like tell you what, it really helps when you do. I think you've either got to have a really clear understanding of a problem you don't care about, right? So that you can then go and solve it. Don't care is maybe a little strong, but like a friend of mine, Nick Telson, he's a co-founder of a company called Trumpet, and like I don't think he like cares that much about like sales automation and that kind of stuff, like, right? I don't think he's like he cares, but he's got a real fundamental understanding of like how difficult it is for sales teams to sell nowadays, and he just like so he is really great at solving that. And then there's me over here. I have a fundamental understanding of the needs and the problems, and I also have a passion for it. And you don't need both. You can have both sides, but you have to be clear on where you are, I think.
Gotcha. I mean, I think that's super valuable for listeners to hear about just that process of like, how determined, how perseverant, how long it takes, the sort of grit that you need to have to get those deals. Going back to sort of the cash flow, because again, I'm sure you could put yourself in the shoes of an early stage founder. You were there yourself. So you mentioned, and somebody kind of asked this question in the chat, and I think it's sort of a relevant question. So, like, when you say you didn't take a salary, like, well, then, I mean, the sort of average person is like, well, then how do you pay rent? Or how, you know, were you living in your mom's basement? Where, you know, like, what, how did you manage that when you, in the beginning, were you just living off of savings, or how does that work?
Trying to think, what did I do? Well, in 2018, I was in the Balkans, and that was cheap.
Yeah, that is very cheap. That is very cheap. Yeah,
it was cheap, and like, you know, you know, you get some expenses paid for by Swiss EP, if I remember right, and that was a thing. So that was cheap. And did I have some savings? I think I had like a small bit of savings. I didn't move in with. I was kind of until March, I think. Was it March? Yeah, probably March, actually. Like kind of bunking up my girlfriend's like shared house.
right.
Right. And then we moved in together actually early March. And yeah, we just like, we got a 2-bed place and we rented out the spare room. And I think our, you know, the other rent between us was like £300-400 or something. And just made it work. I think I had a bit of like residual income from the event thing that I started when I was younger, but not a lot. We're not talking a lot. We're talking like maybe £1,500 a month or something, right? Like, it really wasn't a lot of money to live in London. And like, I just did. People's circumstances are different, and I was fortunate to be in a position where, like, you know, I could split the room with my girlfriend and blah blah blah, right? You know, if you got to live in you know, if you wanted to live in London nowadays and rent a flat on your own, it's gonna take a lot. But like, I really sacrificed that then, I think. And you know, I didn't go on holiday that year until a bit later in the year, actually. Until a bit later. I think I went on. Yeah, I think I went away once.
This is a common story where, first of all, you have to recognize that it's all about, you know, keeping your expenditures as low as possible to lengthen your runway. You know, that this idea that, you know, runway being how much capital you have left until you need to raise your following round. And you hear this story all the time, especially with early stage entrepreneurs, where it's sort of a mixture of just like keeping those costs super low and just sort of like hacking systems in a bit. Like, you know, I've heard of founders living with their parents, you know, going back and living home and stuff like that.
I would eat I'd eat in the restaurants.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I do remember that. Right. Like we was, yeah. They'd give me free food.
Right.
Yeah. Right. It was great. Yeah, that kind
of. However, you can kind of just penny pinch everywhere just to extend that, that runway.
I think it is important. You got to understand that there's different circumstances, and you know, you don't necessarily have to. You know, you don't necessarily have to like not have a salary out of your first funding round. You know what I mean? Like that was just the way that it played out. You know, maybe if someone had came in and offered us 200 grand post, you know, those few months post the MVP, you know, probably would have taken a salary, right? Like,
right.
It was, yeah, you know, but it was just, you know, we had 27.5 grand. So like, I could either spend that on software development or pay myself. So I was like, I'm going to spend it on software development. So I think that's probably a better investment in the future of me as a human.
Yeah, it's all right that long-term thinking, right?
Yeah.
What so that here's what I wanted to ask. How did you establish like the valuation of your company early on? Like, you know, you hear a lot of these stories where people sort of debating, like you talked about getting that initial 5K, 10K. Were that for that friends and family round, did you get a lot of pushback on, oh, I think the company's worth this, you know, deciding equity, or did you do like a convertible note? How did you do that?
No, we just raised like straight up equity, if I remember right. Yeah, we definitely did, because we've only ever raised straight equity. We've never done a convertible. And the valuation, I mean, it is what it is, right? Like, you know, when we did that round, our MRR was like £72. So like, you know, there's a real high multiple to get that up to like 1.25 million or whatever. We were at like 7, yeah, like 30 out. So like £1,000 ARR, like so literally like a 1,000 and 1,250x ARR multiple. Good investors, right? Then people that invest in that round are not sophisticated investors, but this rings true full stop. Like good investors understand that you have to keep enough equity in the business so that future fundraisers can happen and the founder or founders are not then disincentivized by owning such a small proportion. And so like I beg any founder entrepreneur on this call to like, if somebody comes to you early stages and like, so I'll give you like 100 grand for 50% of your business, like I don't like it will ruin your life. So just don't do it. Right. Like it's like you just, it is valuing the company early stages is art and storytelling. And it's like, I think the first round was, and we're in the UK, it's a lot more mental in the US for this stuff, but like in the UK where it's a bit more conservative. And, we did 1.25 million pre-money. And then when we raised our like pre-seed round at the end of that year, which was 165 grand, we did that on a 2, I think. And so by that point, we'd given away maybe like 10% of the company for a couple of $100 grand, which is about right at that stage. That's like the right risk return ratio for the investors, right? It's also, don't forget, it's the other way for you look at it from the investor's perspective. They're getting in super early something really exciting. If they put in 20 grand at 2 million pre and you go up to, you kind of achieve what you want to achieve and get it to 200 million, it's 100x and 20 grand. It's like 2 million quid, so they don't get those multiples further into the future. So good investors understand the dynamics early. And then I think as we continued to raise, we just chopped it up a little bit. And we always go out to market with a higher valuation than where we actually are going to land, because we know someone's going to negotiate with us. So we always go out at 8 and we try and find some people at 8. And then some people do tend to, like last round, we got some people in at 8. And then actually someone was putting like a decent sized check, was like 8's a bit punchy for me. And so like we took it down a bit. And, the people that said they're in at 8, they're happy for it to be a bit lower and it's got a big chunk around it. And so, you got to be flexible on valuation and fundraise. But yeah, it's art and science. It gets a lot more sciencey later stage.
Completely agree. So this went by fast, this half hour, because I feel like you just have so much fantastic insights for our founders. I'm going to maybe wrap up with 2 questions. One quick one, just to finish up on this thought right here. So obviously good investors, they understand the landscape and they're going to give you a good deal. Did you, for those smaller checks from friends and family, was there any part of that where you had to do educating? Like, oh, if exactly like you said, like, hey, this is going to give you a very good multiple if it works out. This is the rough valuation. This is what's fair. Did you have to educate people on that, or did they did they already know how it worked?
No, I think I did some education. And then I don't know if there's any British founders on here or anybody operating in the UK or looking to operate, but there's some like interesting tax incentives for investors in the UK. So there's early stage, there's SEIS. SEIS, you get 50% of your investment back as a tax break. And then there's EIS, which is 30% back as tax break. So actually you get to educate them on like, this is you're going to get half your money back. Right, so it's kind of half the valuation anyway. And then actually if the company goes bust after a certain period of time, I think you get like another 30% back or something crazy. So there's that education around that. So actually, I know lots of countries have these types of schemes. So it's worth being an expert in those schemes so you can educate people that are not experts, especially friends and family fundraise stuff, because like they're not going to be experts, but they're going to want to support you as a entrepreneur if you've made something cool.
Right. Exactly. All right. So, and just to wrap up as a last question, do you have anything like sort of top of mind that, oh, I wish I would have known this, or some sort of crucial advice that you feel that most first-time entrepreneurs maybe are not aware of, or, if you could have spoken to yourself, back then, something that, I don't know, might help a first-time founder? So I know it's maybe because it's so open, but if you got something.
No, it's a good question. I'm thinking of so many, and I think I mean, if it, there's start fundraising like way earlier than you could ever think you're going to need the money. Mm-hmm. Like an order of if you're going to need it in 6 months, start a year earlier. Right. Double it. Basically double the time frame. And because the last thing you want is to be running out of cash and closing a funding round, because investors can kind of like smell the desperation and they're just going to ignore you. So like you want to, you want, it's kind of like dating, honestly. And you want to give yourself enough time. That's, one of the reasons. There's a few reasons that EarlyBird failed. One was, the business model wasn't as fantastic as it should have been. So it was expensive to operate a subscription snack business, and then we had some macroeconomic things happen around Brexit, which wasn't great. But fundamentally, the reason we stopped was because we ran out of money, and the reason we ran out of money is because I didn't do the funding round early enough, really, and I didn't actually have enough capital left in the business to weather it not going to plan. And so now I fundraise way earlier than needed, and that would be my advice to EarlyBird founder Oliver, is raise earlier. Though I mean I much prefer TableYeti as a business, so I'm kind of happy it died in a weird way. It all worked. Sorry, investors in that one. But I've had investors that invested in that business, and I've invested in this one. So that's how this works. Companies fail.
Gotcha. I think that's brilliant advice, and it feels all the more sort of real and powerful coming from somebody who's been through it a few times already. Oliver, can't thank you enough. I feel we have about 40 people on this call. I'm sure every single one of them got a lot out of this. This was super valuable. You got a busy, you obviously have a busy schedule. You're running a startup, so I'm going to let you go. But can't thank you enough for your time, and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for taking the time as well. Like I get a lot out of speaking about my journey. So it's both ways, give and take. So yeah, good luck everyone. And Eric, you're a legend. Thanks, bud. We'll chat soon.
Thanks so much.
Cheers, guys. Thanks. Bye. Bye.